Hi, this is Sarah of Sarah Q Geist DBT Myofascial Release. I am doing a special video today. It's a full treatment session, so I'm not sure exactly how long it will be, hopefully between an hour and 10 minutes. And it's specifically related to what's going on right now with the COVID-19 pandemic in the sense of what happens if you get sick. So I have a colleague of mine who's a myofascial release practitioner who lives in New York City, and she got sick. She does have some respiratory issues, and so I think was more susceptible to getting more seriously ill from the virus. And she posted about what her experience was like. And one of the things that she talked about, and I think we've heard a lot of people talk about this, is the heaviness on the chest and difficulty with breathing. And so I wanted to do a video basically kind of opening up areas that help you with breathing, and also just starting to kind of get used to this idea of breathing consciously without taking control of your breath. So this is totally a helpful video even if you aren't at risk for getting sick right now, if you're kind of in a low risk category, if you're staying home. This still is a really helpful video because a lot of times what I see with people is when I have them bring awareness to their breath, all of a sudden they're breathing with a lot of force. And so it's really not helpful. We should be able to watch our breath, and we should be able to take control if we feel like we need to, but we should also be able to kind of just be a witness to our breathing. So that's one of the things that my friend talked about, that the more that she tried to take a deeper breath, the harder it was. And she found it really helpful to just be able to kind of focus on her breathing, but without there being effort. That was the thing that helped her the most as far as being able to breathe. That, as well as really keeping her activity levels low. So she talked about, when taking a shower, she had a stool or a chair in her shower with her so that she could sit down because standing was really difficult. Who knows if you end up getting this illness, if that's how it'll affect you. But I think helpful to kind of think about the things that make breathing harder to do. If we're being more active, that's putting a strain on our respiratory system, then it's going to be harder to breathe. So finding the activity level that works for you as well. So I think what I would like to do today is just start to kind of play around with some of the areas that really kind of affect breathing. So if we think about our rib cage, our rib cage kind of houses where our lungs are, but then we also have the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle here, and when the diaphragm contracts, it moves down like this. And what that actually does is it creates negative pressure through our lungs, so that the lungs fill up with air. Okay, so it's actually that pulling down that kind of pulls air into our lungs, and that's typically how we breathe, unless we're really struggling for breath, and then we'll start to use what we call accessory muscles. So some of the accessory muscles are actually muscles up here. So if you see somebody with COPD, a lot of times when they're taking a breath, these muscles are kind of contracting and lifting the rib cage up. Same idea, it's just expanding the rib cage so that air gets pulled into the lungs. But these muscles will fatigue much faster, and they'll cause you some discomfort and pain into the neck as well. And then we also have just all of the muscles in between all of our ribs. And those are really important to make sure that the ribs can actually expand well. So a lot of different areas that we'll kind of be working on today, but the first thing that we'll start with is just some breath awareness. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about supplies. So you'll want something that you can lie on, whether it's a carpet or mat, a rug, something to just kind of be comfortable. If you have one of these Sport Time 4-inch all balls, they're great for doing some of the myofascial release techniques. Some of the other kind of rolling balls that are out there, it should have quite a bit of squish to it so that it's nice and comfortable. A tennis ball is going to be way too firm, so anything firmer than that is definitely out as well. So hopefully you have something around that you can use, kind of like this. And then you'll want a chair that you can sit on, hopefully not too high of a chair, and we'll do a few techniques. I'm going to try to be mindful about people who are pregnant and talk about ways to kind of do things a little bit differently. There will be a couple techniques that you won't be able to do if you're pregnant, and I'll talk a little bit about what you can do. So let's get started. So the first thing that you want to do is find a comfortable reclined position. If it's comfortable for you to lie completely on your back, go ahead and do that. If you need to lie kind of propped up, please go ahead and do that as well. That can make it easier to breathe because the diaphragm actually gets a little bit of an assist from gravity as well. So find that comfortable position, get yourself into that comfortable position, and at any time if you need to readjust, feel free to. You don't have to choose your position and stay there. This isn't a formal meditation. It's just an opportunity to start to be aware of your breathing. If you'd like, you can place a hand on your chest and on your belly if that feels comfortable for you. And again, the goal here is not to change your breathing by watching it. Your goal is to watch your breathing and see what's happening there. So just start to notice the inhale and the exhale, and start to notice where you feel the inhale and the exhale. So which hands do you feel the breath moving into? Maybe you feel movement a little bit more in one hand or the other. Maybe you don't feel movement at all in the hands, or in one of the hands rather. And where do you feel the breath in your body? So you might be able to feel kind of some of the expansion that happens as we breathe in. You might notice that in the belly, you might notice that in the chest. And a lot of times we really focus on the front of our body. That's where most of our senses are oriented. But breathing happens in the side and it happens in the back as well. So think about that whole rib cage area, and as you're lying there, see, can you feel anything on the sides of the waist or sides of the rib cage, back of the rib cage, or even into the lower back expanding as you inhale. And as we're doing this, just kind of note, again, without changing the breath, how deep is your breath right now? How quickly or slowly is your breath coming? Does that rate change? Kind of have maybe a few breaths at the same rate, and then all of a sudden a bigger, slower breath. Maybe what you're noticing right now is that it's really hard for you to notice your breath, and that's totally okay. Don't let yourself get frustrated by all of the things that I'm talking about. I don't expect anyone to be able to necessarily feel all of the things that I'm talking about. I'm more just kind of throwing out options. It's like a multiple choice, or planting a seed of like, oh, maybe if I focus a little bit more, I can feel that. You can also just start to pay attention to where the breath is moving through. So if you're breathing through your nose, it's moving through your nostrils. Can you feel the breath kind of moving down the throat? Again, those can be difficult ones. Just noticing, paying attention, giving yourself a little bit of time with the breath. Good. And then we're going to start actually by working directly onto the rib cage. And so I'm going to give you some options in different areas of the rib cage, and I want you to just play around with it and know that any of these techniques, if you're kind of on an area and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much more for me to work on here, you can do this on your own. 3 to 5 minutes is what we talk about for timing. But we just want to make sure that you're able to stay focused and feeling relaxation, releases happening, that you're not kind of tensing into anything. So that's the most important piece. As long as you can feel releases happening, you can hang out for a little bit more than 3 to 5 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by working on the back, and I'm going to think about the right side of the rib cage to start. So you have this rib cage here, kind of from the low back up to where we think of these muscles that get really tight. So, and the shoulder blade kind of over top of the rib cage. So you don't necessarily want to be on top of the shoulder blade, but anywhere in that area. And so this is where the rolling piece comes into play. You can kind of get onto that ball, support your head, roll around a little bit, or if you know exactly where you're feeling tight or feeling some discomfort, just go right for that. And so always you're trying to find an area where there's a little bit of tension, there's a little bit of tightness, there's a little bit of discomfort, or maybe more than a little bit, but that you're able to relax onto it. You shouldn't feel like the pressure from the ball is causing you to tighten up, okay? So once you find that position, then your job is to fully relax. So I can feel right now my shoulder is kind of, I'm pulling it and holding it up off of the floor. So first thing I really want to do is see, can I let that relax down, and my arm can just kind of go wherever it wants to go so that that's comfortable and so that I'm really as supported as possible. So let yourself feel into the support of what you're lying on, not just the ball, but everything else. And see, can you relax a little bit more into the floor? Are there places where the floor can support you more if you let it? And just by going into that, that's going to allow the area that we're working on to be able to relax a little bit more. So if you feel like you're holding yourself up onto the ball, see what happens if you just kind of let yourself soften and relax, so that you're not maybe directly on top of it, but maybe kind of diagonally on it. If that feels like you lose the spot you're working on, you can always kind of get yourself back up onto the ball and put something else underneath you to kind of support you in that position. But if it feels good to just kind of let yourself flop so that you're partially on, partially off the ball, that's totally fine. So the biggest piece here is awareness. Just noting what is here, what happens when you bring some kind, focused attention to it, and just give it the opportunity to shift. So we're not trying to force anything to happen. We're just kind of being with the sensations, being with the process. And just noticing what we're feeling underneath where the ball is, around where the ball is, and anywhere else in the body. So oftentimes when I work on the back of the rib cage, it relates to areas in the front of the rib cage. So I would just invite you to bring your awareness into the front of the rib cage and notice if there's any areas of tightness there that are making it hard for you to be able to fully relax. And not that you're going to necessarily do anything with that right now, except bring your awareness into it and just feel it and be with it. And breathe. Notice your breath without changing, without forcing. So if this is your first time doing any kind of myofascial release, especially that taught by John Barnes, you will quickly get that there is no forcing here. We're not pushing anything. We're not trying to make anything release. It's really about bringing awareness and softening. So when you're ready, kind of roll yourself off the ball, grab that ball out from underneath you, and then we're going to stay on the right side. And what we're going to do next is we're going to, so move slowly as we start kind of moving through this. You don't want to be kind of moving quickly, so just, move as little as you need to see me. We're going to be working basically from under the armpit down the side of the rib cage. You can go below the rib cage if that feels exactly where you want to be. So somewhere along into that area. This is why it's really important to have a nice, soft, squishy ball. A hard ball would be too much, especially on those lower ribs that are kind of free floating. That would be a little bit too much. So again, you can kind of play around a little bit. I know that I always like to be right under my armpit in that area, but kind of let yourself play around a little bit and see, yep, there's definitely some stuff there, kind of a little bit lower where my bottom of my shoulder blade comes in and lines up. So play around, find a spot that feels like it's helpful, like there's something there for you, and then start to soften in. So with this one, I always find that I want to support my head at first. If you have a pillow lying around, it can be nice to have a pillow to stick under your body, and it just usually takes me a while to soften in until I feel comfortable letting my head rest down onto my arm. If you have a pillow, your arm can be kind of in front of you like that. So the other thing to know about this is there's like starting points, but there's no really prescribed way to do any one thing, because all of our bodies are different and all of our fascial systems have different patterns of holding. So what works for me is not going to necessarily work for you. So it's kind of up to you to figure out and play around with it. And this is the piece of myofascial release that I also love, is that really you're responsible for figuring out what works for your body. That's why awareness is the key. The more that you know about what's going on with your body, the more that you can start to know what to do when certain things happen. Just got distracted by an intense release there. So I'm going to see if I'm ready to drop my head down. Whew. Using the breath. So I'm not changing the breath, I'm just allowing the breath to be what it wants to be. And as things get intense at times, it can be helpful to allow your breath to be bigger. But there are a lot of times when things are intense where we can try to make our breath bigger to try to get over it and get through it. And that is not helpful. You want to just let yourself be where you are. So if you're familiar with the unwinding process, you can allow that to happen at any point. You don't have to stay static. If you're not familiar with the unwinding process, I have some other videos about unwinding through the head and neck, but that can happen through the entire body. So the body can just kind of move kind of on its own. My arm just really wanted to open up there, palm face up, and so I let it happen. It doesn't have to be a huge, big thing. Noticing the breath, noticing what you're feeling under the ball, being with that sensation as much as you can, and noticing what else you feel around the ball. And what else you feel in other areas of your body. Are there any places where you're holding tight? Can you soften that a little bit more? How does that affect the area where you're working? Just noticing, just being, just feeling. That's the process here. Working with the time, not against it. Allowing that process to take time. Not trying to force it to happen faster. Making it be something it's not. And then again, when you're ready, slowly come off of that ball and get it out from underneath you. So then, next one that we're going to do, stay lying down. Just I'm sitting up so that I can show you. The next one we're going to do is working in through the pecs. So the pecs are a big, large muscle that go from the sternum in the center of the chest out into the arm. And so they cross over a big area of the rib cage in the front. So if that is really tight and locked down, it can pull our posture forward. We see a lot of people kind of this forward rounded posture, right? And make it a lot harder to breathe. Throws off all of the mechanics of breathing. So opening up through the front of the chest can be a really nice thing to do. If you're pregnant, you're not going to necessarily be able to lie on your belly, depending on how pregnant you are. So you can get a hand right onto your chest and just allow the arm to kind of relax back. You should feel a little bit of a stretch in there. If you have any trouble with that, please feel free to shoot me a message, comment, and we can work a little bit together on seeing if we can make that work for you. If you feel comfortable lying on your belly, you want to take that ball and get it ready and go ahead and go onto your belly. We're going to stick with the same side right now. So we've gone from back to side to front of rib cage. So go ahead and grab your ball, stick it under your chest. You're going anywhere on that side of the rib cage, below the collarbones, and you want to be kind of above where, if you know where your sternum is, where the sternum stops, you want to be above that. So if you're female, you can have anywhere basically within where the breast tissue is. It can be pretty tender, so that can be a little bit intense. But again, play around with it. This is where people kind of do the rolling, and I think this is the one place where rolling around can be helpful. I like to just move the ball because it's a little bit easier with a foam roller. The rolling works a little bit better because more of your body is supported. And just kind of find, where's the spot for me today? There's a lot of spots for me, but where's the one for today? So I'm going to be a little bit more on the outside, kind of closer to where the arm comes into the chest, and then just start to lower myself down over the ball. If you can see the screen and you look closely, you can even see when I take an inhale that my back kind of rises up and lowers down as I exhale. So this can be a good position to start to be aware of the breath in the back of the body. The front of the body is kind of locked down by the floor. It doesn't have much place to expand. Though you might feel as you inhale there's a little bit of increased pressure onto the ball, or onto your body from the ball. And play around a little bit with where your arm is. A lot of times we tend to want our palm facing our back body, kind of rolls the shoulder forward and closes us off a little bit in the front of the chest. So I'd encourage you to play around with the palm facing the same direction that the front of your body is facing. And then you can see, what does it feel like to be in different positions. So this is where you can start to kind of play around a little bit with that idea of unwinding and just seeing what position feels right for the body. Your brain is going to come in and it's going to say, well, you should be doing this and this should happen, and you're not feeling this, and she's talking about that, but that's not happening for you. So there must be something wrong with you. And just kindly tell it to shut up and allow yourself to feel your body. Our bodies have a lot of intelligence. They've been playing this game, doing this thing called life a lot longer than our prefrontal lobe has been in the mix. So you can let the mind, let the thoughts, the shoulds, the what ifs, the why nots, just take a break for a moment. And just let sensation be the guiding force for what works for you right now. Feeling the sensations, feeling the breath, Just being in this moment. When the mind starts whirling, as soon as you realize it's whirling, just bring yourself back to the body and back to the sensations. If the sensations get mild, it's just really good practice for you to practice your focus. See if, even with mild sensations, can you relax into that? Or do you require really intense sensations to relax into? Can you train yourself with focus to relax into sensations that are harder for you to pay attention to? Where's that line for you? Myofascial release, it's always about finding the line of where you're challenged to relax but still can relax. And sometimes pain is that challenge, discomfort is that challenge, and sometimes, probably more times, lack of awareness is that challenge. So slowly allow yourself to come off of the ball. I want you to take a moment in kind of a neutral position, so resting your head onto your forearms or onto your hands. If it feels okay to do it with your face looking down, do that. Or if that's really uncomfortable, go ahead and roll onto your back, but be kind of in a neutral position so one side of your body isn't doing something different than the other side of your body. And take a moment there and notice what the side of your body that we worked on, the front, the side, and the back of the rib cage feels like versus the side of the body that we have yet to work on. Notice a few inhales and exhales and just see, does it feel different on the left side when you're inhaling versus the right side? It may feel different to you, it may not feel different to you, and both of those are totally fine. Just noticing, just being aware. And always with kindness. So if you're still on your belly, take the ball, and I'm going to have you take it to the other side, the other pec. So again, you can kind of move around, find a spot that feels like it works for you. My clock here. And again, play around with where the arm is. You can't see that I'm doing that, but I am. Playing around with where the arm is resting. Playing around with the palm being face up or face down. And playing around with where exactly that is located below the clavicle, the collarbone. You don't want to be going any lower than what's in line with the bottom part of the sternum right now. And the front of the chest is what we're shooting for here. And then just letting yourself land on the area that you've chosen for now. You can really easily get caught up in, oh, is this the right spot and should I be somewhere else? As long as you have some sensations that you can feel into, that you can relax into, you can play around with, you're in the right spot. The nice thing about the fascial system is that it's all connected, so technically you can be on any spot in the body and have it relate and get into any other spot. The only way that you can do this incorrectly or do it wrong or do it in a way that could potentially cause harm is if you're trying to force something that's not ready to release. It's okay to be on something that's not ready to release. Just be with it. But it's the forcing that takes you down the wrong path with this. So, as long as you're being firmly gentle, you're finding that line for yourself of where there's something to go into, but not forcing yourself to go into more than you can go into. You're right where you need to be.
And then the other way that you can kind of go down the wrong path with this is if you're doing it without awareness. And that's going to vary. Some days I do this, I'll self-treat while I'm reading or replying to text messages. Figure it's better than replying to text messages and not doing this. And there are some days where I really can go in and do it fully without any distractions. At least any external distractions, and we're always working with those internal distractions of thinking and letting our awareness go somewhere else. And that's okay, that's just what's going to happen. And as soon as you realize it's happening, bring yourself back. Back to the sensations, back to the breath, back to the letting go that you're encouraging, that you're giving the opportunity for. And then slowly getting the weight off of the ball, getting the ball out from underneath you, and then coming onto that same side. And again, we're going to be working with anywhere from under the armpit, down the side. Again, you can be in between the ribs and the pelvis if that feels like it's the spot that you need to be in today. But as far as for breathing purposes goes, well, that's going to be helpful too, actually. So you really fair game anywhere along in there, either on the rib cage or below the rib cage. So I'm starting to hopefully get a sense of the process here. Know where you're going, play around, see exactly where you want to be. Kind of test a few spots and find that line of, yep, there's definitely something there to work on, but it's not so intense that you can't relax into it. Sometimes you just have to see, I don't know, can I relax into this? Give yourself that opportunity. This side I feel like, well, maybe not. Again, just allowing the breath to be. We can definitely use the breath to help us to relax, but I see a lot of people that are trying to force the breath to try to force relaxation. So what I encourage you to do is to play around with allowing the breath to be what it is in order to allow relaxation to happen. When I was first learning relaxation techniques, everything in my life that I had ever done, that's probably not entirely true, but that's what it felt like at the point. Everything that I had ever done, I had to really make happen. And the thing with relaxation is that you cannot make it happen. You have to allow it to happen. And that's a very different process than what we're used to in our culture. But it's a very helpful process to learn. So I think a lot of us, if you're watching this while we're kind of self-quarantining, staying home, trying to, quote, flatten the curve, a lot of us are starting to realize how little we actually have control of. It's always been true, but now it's really in our face, how little we actually have control of and how little we can try to force and make things happen. So a really good time to practice allowing. And I always find that it's helpful for me to learn concepts in my life and the greater kind of patterning of my life, to learn that in my body. Because my body is how I experience the whole world. So if I can't figure it out in my body, it's really hard to find that kind of out in the world. Softening, relaxing, releasing, or feeling, noticing. If you notice that you're tensing, and it's been this one, a couple minutes into this one, move that ball a little bit. Or move your body a little bit so that it's not quite so intense. Still noticing the breath, noticing the body. Noticing what else in the body are you feeling or aware of as you're letting yourself go into the spot that is over the ball. And then again, slowly just lifting yourself or rolling yourself off the ball, getting it out from underneath you, and then you can just come onto your back. I'm going to change positions just so it's easier for me to see my timer. It was not a good demonstration of moving slowly. So we're going for your second side. This is kind of the last rib position that we're going to go into onto the back. So again, remember, you don't want to be right on the shoulder blade, but anywhere on the back, kind of around the rib cage. It can be as high up as those upper trap muscles. It can be low down to the bottom of where the ribs are. If you're not sure where that is, just poke around a little bit and see where the hard rib cage ends, and there's a little bit of hopefully softness before the pelvis starts as you move your way down. So once you've found a position here or a spot where you feel like there's something to get into, again, just allow yourself to soften. Again, I notice that I kind of feel like I'm holding myself up onto the ball, and so I'm going to see what happens if I just let myself kind of roll so that I'm supported by the floor and the ball is still underneath. And if I move my arm around a little bit, yep, I can still feel like there's something to soften in and relax into. For me, I can feel that going into the front of my abdomen, which we'll get into soon here. Just notice what happens when I give you a little bit more time to be with the process. When you're ready, slowly roll off the ball, get it out from under you. Just take a moment and lie on your back, feel your body, and take a moment to just reflect what that was like to have me be quiet and allow you to just kind of be with your process. Just noticing if you were able to stay with the process or you got distracted into thinking. And we're going to come back onto the belly again. If you are pregnant, even if you are in your first trimester and really not feeling a whole lot of anything happening or expanding into the abdomen, you still don't want to do this next one. This next one we're going to be going into the psoas. So the psoas is a really deep muscle. It attaches to all of our lumbar vertebrae and our thoracic vertebrae, and we often access it through the abdomen. And we talk about it being the front of the back, so it's really kind of in the midline almost of our body. So any direct pressure in through the abdomen when you're pregnant is definitely a no-no. So if you are pregnant, what I would suggest that you do is just kind of fast forward ahead until you see me going into a sitting position on a chair, and you know then that you can rejoin us. If you are not pregnant and don't have any hernias, any abdominal hernias would be the other reason not to be doing this, you're welcome to join me. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting into the upper areas of the psoas. So like I said, the psoas attaches into all of the lumbar vertebrae. Did I say it attaches into the lower thoracic vertebrae as well? And so when we're talking about that diaphragm, we actually have the psoas kind of running behind the diaphragm, and so there's a lot of relationship between the psoas muscle and the diaphragm, and so working up a little bit higher can be helpful for getting into that. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the ball. It's going to be on one side of your abdomen, just below the rib cage. So if you think about kind of the midline where your belly button is, where the side of your waist is, you want to be about halfway in between those two, right below the rib cage. This can be pretty intense, so if this is too intense for you to lie over the ball, you can always lie on your back and just kind of give some gentle pressure into the ball. If that doesn't work for you, go on to the sitting ones, and we'll get to this in a little bit of a different way as well. So get yourself, like I said, ball right below the rib cage on one side, doesn't matter which side. And just let yourself start to soften down. So when I first started doing this, I would kind of have to hold myself up at first. And then as things relaxed, I can slowly lower myself down. And just allowing yourself to, again, be with the process. I'm going to give you a little bit more time and space to do that, in the sense that I won't be talking through this entire one. And so I want you to just kind of be aware of your process as it's happening. Just notice when your brain starts chattering at you, either about things totally unrelated or telling you how something should be different in this moment. And as soon as you realize that's happening, just gently bring yourself back to sensation. And gently roll yourself off the ball. Take it around to the other side. Again, going to the side of the abdomen, just below the rib cage, midline, or halfway between the midline and the side of the waist. And then again, just going back into the process of feeling, softening, being with sensation. And slowly get yourself off the ball, get the ball out from underneath you. Take a moment lying face down, forehead resting on your arms, and just allow yourself to feel the ground underneath you. Reflect for a moment on what that was like to, again, just be with your own process without me leading you as much. And then you're going to very slowly, in whatever way feels right for your body, make your way up. We're going to come to a sitting position. So, hopefully our pregnant friends have joined us again. Here we are. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to work a little bit on these muscles up into kind of the neck, the front of the neck and the chest. So first thing you want to do is just find where your hand is happy to kind of rest onto the skin of the center of your chest. You can kind of just run your hand down and see if there's any kind of point where your hand really just melds into your chest or just kind of naturally stops.
And that's what you're going to go for. You really want the skin on the palm of your hand to really be making contact, firm contact, with the skin on your chest. And I don't mean firm because you're pressing, I mean firm because there's some friction that has been created there, where you almost just kind of feel like your hand is stuck. Other hands can go on top of that hand if you'd like for kind of a little bit more support. And at first, all you want to do is you want to really make sure that your arms and your shoulders are relaxed. So it's almost like the connection between your hand and the skin on the front of your chest is what's holding up your arms. And you're just going to kind of allow the weight of your arms and your hands to pull that skin down a little bit. And once you feel like you've kind of come to a stopping point with that, like you found the end point, the barrier is what we call it, and then what you can do is you can start to very slowly take your head backwards. I'm just going to swivel so you can see kind of how I'm doing that. So very slowly taking your head backwards, very different than just going like that, right? So nice and slowly, and you should start to feel a little bit of stretching through the front. And you should feel a little bit like you don't have to hold your head up with your muscles, like that tension in the front is what's keeping your head from just flopping backwards. And you can play around a little bit with what it feels like to have your head going straight back or rotating one side to the other. If I rotate to this side, I get really pretty intense sensation over into the left side of my neck. Play around a little bit with bending to the side. Again, you're always going slowly and gently, looking for that barrier, looking for that line where there's something to release and relax, and then you're staying at that barrier. You're not forcing through it, you're not pushing through it, you're not making it relax. You're being with that barrier. I would say to people when they're learning to do this, it's like if you're going over to a friend's house and you go up to their front door, you're not going to just stand on the porch without knocking, right? Because then they might not know they're there. And you're not going to just bust in unless it's a really good friend. Even a really good friend, hopefully you're not busting in. You're going to knock on the door, right? You're going to hang out at the barrier and you're going to wait for your friend to say, yes, I'm ready for you to come in. Come on in. And that's what you're doing with your body. You're finding the barrier and you're hanging out there until your body's like, yeah, actually, I would be really happy to let go here. That would be really great. It's a back and forth relationship versus you telling your body what it should be doing. Again, just allowing your body to move how it wants to without making it. So my torso is starting to twist to get me into a stretch release a little bit more. And then I'm coming out of it. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. My body knows. I trust that. I've found myself in some really amazing positions that I never would have thought of. And they're exactly right for releasing the exact right spot that needs to be released. So I've learned, just let it go, let it happen, just trust it. And if you're still with your head in the center just going back a little bit and you're still feeling things there, that's totally fine. So if you've been in this position for a little while, it might be nice to take your top hand, give a little bit of help in the back of your head, and then you can slowly let your hand kind of release the pressure down, and then slowly bring your hand off. So we're going to do what's called a direct release for the diaphragm. So again, we're working that area right below the rib cage directly. If you are pregnant, there's an option for just resting your hand on the lowest part of your rib cage. So you may feel a little bit like part of your hand is kind of going onto your belly if you're maybe in your third trimester or so, and that's totally fine. So just kind of allowing your hand to rest onto that area for a moment and just allowing yourself to feel the sensations there. If you are interested in me kind of walking you through a little bit more of a myofascial release for that area, shoot me a comment and I can do one for people. But if you're not pregnant and don't have any abdominal hernias, what you're going to do is and your hands are okay to kind of use a little bit. What you're going to do is you're going to take your hands and you're going to bend them right at where your finger meets your palm, like that. And you're going to take that and you're going to bring it just under your rib cage. Turn sideways a little bit. So that's where you're shooting for, okay? And if you just do that, I don't know about you, but on me, that is an area where there's a lot of tightness and a lot of tension. Yes, there's like a surface layer of fat, but underneath that, there's some tightness and some tension. And so what you need to do to be able to get into that a little bit is to start to slump. This is one of the few times where we let you go into a nice slump. And so what you'll feel is that as you slump, your fingers are actually able to kind of go into your body a little bit more. And so nice and slowly coming down onto those fingers and allowing yourself to be with the breathing a little bit here. So right now I'm like, oh, I don't feel a whole lot, and then when I inhale, I feel quite a bit. And so that's my barrier, because it's a barrier for the inhale. I'll just allow the exhale to feel like, oh, a little bit of a break. And you may notice that the left side is a little bit different than the right side, and so you may find that you go off to one side a little bit so that you can make contact with a barrier on both the left and the right side. Again, you're not forcing into anything, you're feeling where there's some resistance from your body, physical, right? Like you can feel with under your fingers that there's resistance in the tissue. And then you're just maintaining pressure there without trying to force through it. Just being with it. And again, you might switch side to side. The diaphragm muscle is really amazing and kind of has a lot of swirls and goes in many different directions. So I always find when I release this, my releasing goes in all kinds of different directions. So what I mean by that is, okay, I'm holding at a barrier here, and as that barrier starts to soften, that softening happens in a three-dimensional way. It's not just a straight down or a straight to the side. You can let your head drop down if that feels right. You may be curved more than me, you may be curved less than me. All of that is totally fine. Your forearms might be resting on your knees or your thighs. And my body's kind of pushed myself out on the left side. And I'm going to respect that and just focus on the right side, but you're welcome to stay on both sides. Just be with your process, allow your process to be yours. Be interested by it and wonder what it's about, but don't try to figure it out too much, just allow it to be. And then you can slowly release both hands if you haven't already. I always, again, I kind of like to push myself up just to give my body a little bit of help, not ask it to relax and release and then do work right away. And then I want you to come into your original position that we did the breath awareness in the first time. So that you're nice and comfortable and supported, reclined to an amount that feels right for you. So again, if you're having any difficulty breathing or if you're pregnant, being more reclined is going to be a little bit easier. Sitting straight up can be hard because then your core is kind of on a little bit to keep you upright. So you do want to be leaned back and kind of supported by something, but how much you're leaned back depends on what feels right for you. And so again, you're just going to meet your breath with awareness without asking it to be different than it is right now. But just notice, and if you want hands, chest and belly, and just notice any differences in your breathing now compared to before we did this practice. You may notice your breath in different places. Maybe now you can feel your breathing happening in your belly, whereas before you really couldn't. If you have your eyes open, you can play around with closing your eyes. If that feels comfortable for you. A lot of times that allows us to be aware of more things in our kind of internal environment or landscape. And just allowing yourself to feel your breath coming into your body. Even if it's just a little bit, you have fresh oxygen coming in. With each inhale, the oxygen is moving into your lungs and into your bloodstream. And with each exhale, we're releasing waste products, CO2 and other gases, that are coming from the blood supply into the lungs and out of the body. So it can always be really nice to think about the inhale bringing in things that you want, and the exhale letting go of things that you don't want. If you're feeling some anxiety in general or anxiety around breathing, you can think about calm coming in with each exhale, and tension or stress or anxiety, whatever word really fits for you, going out with each exhale. So that can be a nice little meditation on the breath as it is. Inhaling calm and exhaling tension. If visualization works better for you, you can visualize the trachea branching off, going into the lungs, so you have those kind of tubes that go down into the lungs that branch off. All of those little branches eventually ending in these little kind of bubbles that as you inhale, fill, and as you exhale, close. So even if your breathing doesn't feel as deep as you might like it to right now, you can think about, almost on a minuscule level, all of the little thousands and thousands of areas where expansion happens inside of your lungs. Allowing yourself to feel that expansion wherever your breath goes to. Noticing the space that is there right now without asking for more. And so you can allow yourself to stay in this space of just feeling the inhale and the exhale. Feeling the space that is there, bringing in calm, letting go of tension. Or if you feel ready to move on with your day, you can just start to bring your awareness back to your body and feeling the places where your body is supported. The floor underneath you, the pillow under your head, whatever it is. Feeling that support. If your eyes are closed, keep them closed, but just remember the room around you and focus on hearing the sounds inside the room where you are and outside of the room where you are. Remind yourself of the day, what time it is. And when you feel ready to open your eyes, you can open your eyes. When you feel ready to move your body, you can move your body. And just allow yourself to slowly come back to your day. Don't ask yourself to go from this softening, this relaxing, this opening back to moving forward quickly again. Allow yourself to speed up to the speed, again, that feels right for your body. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please shoot me a message, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys, and hope you're all staying well.